Secrets are leverage. What you know that somebody else doesn't know, 100% that's leverage. But secrets have kind of two dimensions on their graph of value. There's the intensity of the secret, right? That's one part of the graph. But then there's the timing of its release, the timing of when you make the secret public. So it's not secret anymore. What you're always trying to do is find the point where you get the highest level of intensity at the right time so that you can maximize the impact of releasing the secret. Epstein files, JFK files, UAP, UFO files, all of those things where we only see partial releases, partial redactions, partial declassification, that's showing us that the government believes there's a moment of impact between the timing of that release and the intensity of that secret that gains them leverage for whatever they want to do next. It's not something they're doing to be nice. It's not something they're doing to pay us back. It's something that they're doing because they need that leverage for what comes next. Remember the China spy balloon incident?
Oh, yes.
In the lead up to the China spy balloon incident, nobody was talking about really much of anything. They were talking about China, but they weren't talking about UFOs and they weren't talking about China spying on the continental United States. They were talking about the threat of China overall. Then the balloon presented itself, and there were days, just a few days in advance, where they started talking about there's a UFO in the sky. There's a UAP. Nobody knows what it is. So all the UFO people got really geared up, but the typical American was like, meh, more UFO sightings. We don't really believe in that. Then the shit hit that it was a spy balloon from China, and pictures started coming across, and that shit's over like Virginia. People are losing their fucking minds, right? There was a reason that was released. There's a reason that it wasn't released 2 days before and it wasn't released 2 days after. It was released at that moment. And it was because the US needed the support of the American people before it launched F-6 or F-22s to shoot down this fucking balloon over the coast of Virginia, knowing that shrapnel or debris might land on someone's house, right? They wanted to shoot it down over the ocean, but they needed to have insurance just in case they screwed it up or the winds changed or something, right? So now we release it's a China spy balloon. It gives us a chance to show off our weaponry, highlight the threat of China, rally America around a new threat, and it gives us plausible deniability so that if we do shoot down a balloon and if something does fall on somebody's church, at least we're like, hey, we're protecting the homeland. You know, we're not a bad, evil government. But then immediately after that, there were like 3 or 4 more balloons in the sky. What were all of those called? UFOs. And then in the following weeks, all people were talking about was these UFOs. Are they more balloons? We don't know. The government's only calling them UFOs and UAPs because there wasn't a reason to call them what they really were, right? That's how the government plays leverage. How do I play my card now to get what I need in this reliable period of time, knowing that there's a shelf life for the secret and there's a shelf life for the release. So I'm off target with your Epstein files, but that's the same thing I'm seeing. The intensity doesn't match the timing to release the secrets yet. It could be that they're trying to cover up something that's embarrassing. It could also be they have something so good, now is not the right time to release it.
Is it also possible, like when I look at the JFK files, that seems more like a dissipation of energy? Like we want to sort of drip and drab it out for a long time so that by the time you have everything, it's like, well, there's really nothing here. Because if there was really nothing there from the beginning and it wouldn't have mattered released 40 years ago, why didn't they release it 40 years ago? And then the Epstein files it seems impossible that this is the one that you hide. By hiding it now, you just seem complicit. So it seems to me that there has to be something so damning in that file that they'll take the reputational hit for saying, because they said we're going to release it and now they're not.
Correct. And that you're seeing that matrix play out right now. Let's use the JFK files as a comparison, right? If we would have released the details of the JFK file in the late 60s or early 70s, right? If that would have happened then, and there would have been signs that the FBI were tracking somebody who was already in relationship with the Soviets, and there was the CIA, Soviet police overlap, like all the stuff that's been released in the recent tranches. If that would have come out then, it would have been a major issue. So they didn't release it then. Instead, they release it now, when the intensity level is much less. So the timing is much less. So just like you have times where you want to release stuff to gain leverage, maybe you want that leverage to negotiate. Maybe you also want that leverage to dissipate, to slow boil out. So now it's like, oh, Of course, the Soviets were tracking the person. We've been hearing about it in conspiracy theories for decades. So now the conspiracy theories are just being validated. So what's the leverage we're gaining by releasing it now? The leverage that we're gaining is that the current president can say, I released files that nobody else released. I made this publicly accessible when nobody else did, right? The stuff that we're seeing in the JFK files was absolutely intensely desired back then. But by releasing it now, we gain a different kind of leverage. So with Epstein, my suspicion is that people don't fully know how deeply tied he was to foreign governments, to foreign intelligence agencies, maybe even to American intelligence agencies. People don't know the extent. So they're afraid to release what they have, because if they find out more later on, or if somebody else finds out more later on, it could be really bad. Especially in the current geopolitical arena that we're in now, right? When Putin is vying for power against Russia, or Putin is vying for power against Trump, Netanyahu and Trump are close and far and close and far. And then you've got complete transformation in the Middle East between Saudi Arabia and Syria. Like, the whole world is kind of a tinderbox right now. Nobody knows who's the next power broker. This is not the time when you want to say we know something only to find out 6 months from now that we didn't know at all, right? For Russia to use that moment to gain leverage, to release classified files that are released on Reddit, let's say, that show that they knew something about Epstein that we didn't release to our own people.
I'm obsessed with having a mental model that gives me predictive validity. The more I read about history, the more I see things like COVID, Epstein, whatever, is my hypothesis becomes, in a time of crisis, experts, the elites, they're going to use that as an opportunity not to respond to the crisis, but to leverage it, to gain more power, more control. And I have a feeling, looking at the Epstein file, and I'm not like a historian of this, but the mental model that I'm building is there are going to be people on that list that this is going to cause problems for. So that's one level. Powerful people simply do not want the headache. Could also be that they have footage of them doing truly evil things. That obviously is going to be something they want to keep under wraps. But the other one that might be the most interesting of them is simply, I'm beginning to map that people that run the world are effectively immoral. And like you said, it's just leverage. And so there is a darkness to that exists in the human soul, that people in power know that exists in the human soul, and that they willingly use it to gain leverage, and that all of even the power broker people come out of the woodwork, walk right into the honey trap. So the analogy that I use is geopolitics, the narratives that we make at the international level, it's a magician. This is all sleight of hand. The line between good and evil runs through every human heart, and that you can get a distressing amount of people to do something that is evil. And then governments leverage that to wage what I think is economic warfare, to create the world that we see right now, where houses are out of reach and all that. But to me, all of this stuff is tied.
I don't disagree that it's all tied. I also don't disagree that it's complicated, because what you just laid out is not a simple model, right? It's a complicated model. I think both of those things have more truth and validity than they do misdirection or miscalculation, right? To simplify it all, however, what we learn at CIA is that everything is based on consequences and outcomes. There is no good and evil. There is no right and wrong. The average person struggles with that because from the time you're little, you're conditioned to believe in good and evil, right and wrong, right? You go to church to fight evil, to believe in good. There's superhero movies about people who are heroes and people who are villains, right? Right and wrong, good and bad. These are things that are man-made boundaries to help a developing brain learn social norms. That's why those things exist. The church, the public school system, your kitchen table, all of those things are there to help reduce the complexities of life to something simple, something binary, black, white, good, bad, pure, evil, hero, villain. We're always trying to unpack that. As we grow in experience and age, we have to unpack those things. We have to walk those things back. Some people are more gifted at walking those things back, which is why CIA does so much recruiting from people who are on the spectrum.
When you say walking it back, you mean to step outside of the frame of morality.
What we call it at the agency is moral flexibility. Not to step out of it, but to walk beside it. There's times when you want to get back into your morality. There's times when you want to step outside of that morality and adopt a different, more flexible version of morality.
To get to an end.
To get to an outcome that benefits you, right? Because really what we're talking about at the end of the day is survival instinct. All human beings have an innate desire to survive. We don't live in an environment, we don't live in a world where our survival is threatened equally. When you are living in the suburbs of Chicago, you are not in a position of threat like somebody who lives on the outskirts of Khartoum. Completely different levels of threat, but both individuals feel like survival is king. But to survive in the suburbs of Chicago, you might need to drive a BMW Modern Series, whatever, so that you get accepted socially. Outside of Khartoum, you might just need to, know the right time to go to the market so you don't get a drone to drop a bomb on you right now, right? They're different levels of survivability, but the mindset is the same. I say that because what we see worldwide, what we see playing out in headlines is not that much different than what plays out in the boardroom or plays out in the bedroom even. People are constantly trying to survive when we have the opportunity to thrive. We have an opportunity to take calculated risks and grow exponentially. We have an opportunity to make significantly more money than we make right now. We have an opportunity to get more sleep, have better relationships. Everything could be better, especially in the first world. But we're locked in this mindset of, well, if I do that thing that's going to help me make more money, am I doing the right or the wrong thing? Am I being good or bad? Am I a hero or a villain? And because of that, we're constantly trapped in this model that doesn't actually serve us. So CIA's job is to train its officers to step outside of that less optimized model into a more optimized model that we call
4 outcomes. I just want to keep that guidepost.
4 outcomes.
That's interesting because it's so true at the level of the individual. I think there is something more terrifyingly pathological when you take it to the nation state level, because from the mental model that I've built, and please punch me in the mouth if this isn't true, but the mental model that I've built is that to pull that off, the government knows that you're trapped in your morality, the Colonel Jessup from A Few Good Men. And the government, playing the role of Colonel Jessup, is like, listen, so that you can live in that la-la land of your morality, I have to stand on a wall and kill people. And you need men like me to stand on this wall and kill people. And if I tell you that every now and then I have to turn inward and kill one of you to make sure that I can keep this charade going so that you can live that life, then that's what we're going to fucking do. And when people in the morality frame look at the government and the way they actually behave, it is a level of repugnant that is terrifying. Now, when people are in the moral frame and they look at their governments and they realize, oh my God, like to get to this end, you've been morally flexible in a way that I find abhorrent. Now there's like this massive cognitive dissonance. I'm going to lay out a scenario that's a little bit conspiracy theory.
Okay.
And I want to get a sense of whether, I don't need to know if you think or believe it to be true. I want to know if you think it fits within the framework of how governments actually act. Do you know the sinking of the Lusitania?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I do partially.
The story is so awesome. Now, I'll try to mile marker the things where most historians will agree, and I'll try to point out where historians will be like, Tom's out of his mind.
Okay.
Not that I'm coming up with these theories, though. These are definitely things that I've read from researchers and other historians.
Okay.
But the sinking of the Lusitania was in 1915. This is a real communication internal memo that Winston Churchill wrote where he said, we need to find a way to attract neutral ships to our shores as a way of embroiling the US with Germany. Meaning, we want to get passenger ships here that aren't considered military vehicles. We want to get them shot and sunk. Because if America doesn't enter the war, England, that part of the axis is going to end up losing. And so we've got to find a way. And so that communication exists. And that what I just said is very close to verbatim.
Okay.
Then you've got things that happened but are more questionable. So what happened is the Lusitania was retrofitted to be able to carry munitions, explosives, etc. Okay? Why they did it, I won't comment on. They did it. Now, one of the reasons this part is conspiracy that people put forward is that the State Department had financial reason to want the US to enter the war, but they had to make it palatable to the American people. So they're now working with Churchill, who has stated in this communication that this is their plan. So the boat was retrofitted. We know that. Now, did the State Department start doing things like that or work with the DOD to start doing things like that? So that, I mean, technically it would have been the British because it was a British ship, but that it gets retrofitted so they know that it sounds more like a military vehicle to the U-boats. That is an outcome. Why they did it is up for grabs. Another thing that we know happened is they said that this was a civilian ship and that there was no munitions on it. Well, decades after it gets sunk, they find that there were 6 million rounds, million rounds of ammunition on the boat. So they lied about that for a very long time. That we know happened, has been verified. And then here are a whole host of things that do end up happening, whether they were the intent of everything. Again, this is up for grabs. The Germans knew that the British were probably up to something like this, trying to get a civilian vessel to trick a U-boat to get them to sink it, either by putting munitions on it or whatever. So the German government took out ads in the US newspaper saying, hey, this is a thing. And just so you know, don't ride on these ships, especially if they're carrying munitions and they're going to a war zone. We have the right to sink them. And supposedly the State Department stopped those ads from being run, except one got through and it ran. And guess what ship's dates it ran next to? The Lusitania. So right next to the Lusitania is an ad, like in this regional newspaper, put there by the German government saying, hey, these boats are being loaded with munitions. You've got to be careful. Like if you ride one of these boats, likely to get sunk. Okay. Then the Lusitania going across to England, they pull back. It was supposed to be escorted. They pulled the escort back. They steered it into a slightly new direction where the British Admiralty had intercepted German communications saying that there were U-boats in that area. And they told the captain of the Lusitania to slow down. So you divert its course into an area where you know there's U-boats. Did you do it on purpose? Did they just get super unlucky? The chaperone ship was called back to shore. Did they do it on purpose? Was it unlucky? But Lusitania ends up getting shot. All the munitions explode. Boat sinks, and 128 Americans are killed amongst the 1,200 total people that end up dying. The propaganda machinery goes nuts and says, you know, basically they've killed American troops, and the sentiment in America goes from nobody wants to be in the war to now they're inflamed. 2 years later, we're in the war. Now you can put that together of it's just unlucky, man. Right. War and these things happen. And, you know, yes, Churchill was thinking about it, but he didn't, I mean, they weren't really doing it. Sure, they lied about the munitions, but they were really just trying to sneak it over. Or was it Churchill goes, we can't lose. So put the munitions on and it either makes it and we get munitions, or they sink it because we've had to retrofit this thing and it sounds like it and we drive it into the most dangerous area. And now we get the thing that we want, which is the US ends up becoming more likely to get into the war. And when I read that one, I was like, okay, admittedly, I cannot see into the hearts of men. I only know the parts that we can prove. But you look at that and you go, man, this is really uncomfortable that leaders do think like that. Yeah. Now let's move away from the Lusitania and go to Sinwar, Israel, Palestine. And Sinwar goes, I'm going to take hostages. I'm not going to give them back. And now I've grabbed a hold of Israel, and Israel keeps saying, let go, let go, let go. And they're just punching me, Sinwar, in the face by killing Palestinians over and over and over. And I know if I let go, they'll stop punching me. But I'm not going to let go because I want them to punch me. And it's like, God damn, dude. It's so this very distressing mental map that I'm building is there are, again, I'm saying this because I'm trapped. I like being trapped here. Let me be very clear. I am trapped in a moral framework that says, yikes, this is really gross. That leaders will sacrifice because maybe, thank God, America joined World War I. maybe that is good and the world moved in a better direction.
Yeah.
Maybe it's good that Israel is standing up and defending itself. Maybe it's also horrible as fuck. And so talk me off a ledge, because the more I look at history and current affairs, the more I am just like, whoa, like there are dead shark eyes in these power players as far as the eye can see.